Hi guys, my name is Emily, and today I'm going to be talking about Jeffrey Eugenides' The Virgin Suicides. The Virgin Suicides was published in 1993, and it is Jeffrey Eugenides' debut novel. It tells the story of the 5 Lisbon sisters and what it's like to live under the microscope of a small, nosy community after they experience a family tragedy. That tragedy is the youngest Lisbon sister committing suicide, and her suicide kind of has a snowball effect for the family and the sisters. Right off the bat, from page 1 of the novel, we're told that all 5 sisters are dead at the time that we're reading this, and the person who is narrating, this unidentified we, is kind of telling us the story. I found the we for the narrator was kind of creepy, and it gave it a very voyeuristic feeling, like a kind of a spying feeling, like I was doing something a little invasive into the Lisbon sisters' lives, because the we kind of puts the reader in the position of spying through windows and digging through the Lisbon sisters' trash cans, just trying to learn about them. So the boys want to know everything about the Lisbon sisters. The we narrator is the kind of collective group of neighborhood boys who just are obsessed with the Lisbon girls and figuring out why they do what they do. So the boys are haunted by the Lisbon sisters' deaths, and as adults, it's something that still bothers them, and they've come together back to this neighborhood and they've kind of pieced together what they know, just trying to figure out this puzzle. That is exactly the position that we are in as readers, is just trying to figure out why. I watched the 1999 movie adaptation of The Virgin Suicides, and the movie was a faithful adaptation. It also made the we less creepy because it gave the group of boys faces and individual personalities, if not necessarily names. And I feel like the movie also made the Lisbon sisters a little more complex because we were allowed inside the Lisbon house and we could see facial expressions, which the boys, as the we narrator, didn't necessarily give you in the book. For example, dialogue in the book, when I read the words, I took it that the Lisbon sisters were very depressed, very much appearing to be on the decline from their sister's suicide on. But from the movie, where you can see facial expression alongside the dialogue, it made their eventual suicides a lot more confusing because the sisters seem happy in the movie, which I guess it was just my interpretation of the dialogue and the actors, directors' different interpretation of similar dialogue, because they were very true to the book. The problem is that the sisters being played as kind of happy in the movie made it even more confusing that they all killed themselves. Like, I still don't know why. And I think that's probably the point of the book, that we don't know why, and why there's kind of like a internet phenomenon of reading this on BookTube. It's a very simple story, but we're just not given enough clues to ever figure out the answer, and so we keep kind of compulsively reading this thing to see if we missed something when we're not given that. One thing I thought was interesting was the parallels between the elm trees in the Lisbon sisters' neighborhood and the Lisbon sisters themselves. So these diseased trees are being cited by the town to be cut down, and there's an elm tree on the Lisbon sisters' front lawn. And at the beginning of the novel, when Cecilia is still alive, the city comes by and cuts off a limb. Cecilia has pressed her handprint into that part of the tree. And shortly after that, she kills herself. And then later on, the city says, well, like, the whole tree is infested and needs to come down. In the book, they come around to cut off all the top branches before they, I guess, remove the stump or whatever. And the Lisbon sisters rally and say, no, you can't have this tree, kind of thing. And then the tree has already been cited as sick and damaged, and then the Lisbon sisters all kill themselves, and then eventually the tree is removed. And I thought that was kind of interesting, that there's this kind of interesting connection between the nature and the Lisbon sisters. I'm wondering if you guys have any thoughts on that, if you've read The Virgin Suicides, if you think maybe the diseased trees have nothing to do with the Lisbon sisters. The neighborhood in general starts to fall apart around the time of the Lisbon sisters' suicides. Like, there's a steady decline. So I'm wondering if the trees are indicative of the general decline of the town, or just the Lisbon sisters, or both. I'd like to hear your thoughts if you've read the book. So, in the comments below, let's chat. Slight tangent, I was reading this alongside the second part of The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and at some point, the creepy we narrator of The Virgin Suicide blended with Gollum, who speaks in the we because he has those multiple personalities. That was a slightly disturbing effect. I would not recommend that you read either of those together. It just happened to be what I did, and very disturbing effect. I thought I would share that. It was a whole new kind of creepy. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I felt particularly attached to the one sister, Lux. She's the most wild Lisbon sister. I felt kind of bad that the other sisters weren't as compelling as Lux. Lux is probably the reason that the neighborhood boys were spying. At least if I were a neighborhood boy, Lux would be the reason why I was spying, not the other sisters so much. If I could wish anything about this book to be changed, it would be maybe a little more time developing some of the other sisters opposed to just Lux. But that's just my opinion. I will definitely read this book again one day, mostly because, like the wee narrator in the book, I'm curious if I've missed anything. I'm curious if I can put more into why the sisters killed themselves and struggle with this puzzle alongside the wee narrator. So I will definitely read this again. One question for anyone who's read The Virgin Suicides is, what do you think of the ways that each Lisbon sister killed herself? Do you think there's anything significant? How each sister chose to kill herself differently? I have some thoughts, but I'd like to hear your thoughts too, so if you want to talk to me in the comments below, I'd be very happy. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next Sunday. Bye. P.S. This cover, do any of you have this cover? So if any of you guys have this cover, there are 6 girls on the cover. None of them are blonde like the Lisbon sisters, and they're all in kind of various states of nudity. Actually, there are 7 girls in the cover. I forgot about the one that looks like she's falling out of the tree. The Lisbon sisters don't go to nature, ever. They're stuck in their house. To my knowledge, they don't strip down in the woods ever, and there are 5 of them. So who the heck picked this cover? This is, and it's not even a movie adaptation cover. This never happens in the movie either. So, poor choice, whoever designed this cover. End of rant. Goodbye for reals now.